I have here an aquarium with water that's been placed in our freezer. There's a little bit of ice forming near the top, and you can see the temperature at the bottom is currently about 2.9 degrees Celsius. I'm going to place an ice cube in the top. And again, the ice cube has been colored so as to make the melting water visible. I have placed the thermometer probe near the top, and as you can see from the thermometer, the temperature is about 0.6 degrees Celsius. But now also notice that the ice cube has melted a little bit, and the streamers of melted water have gone down to the bottom, indicating that they're more dense than the rest of the water that's in here. So let's now lower the temperature probe to the bottom. The temperature there is now reading about 3.7 degrees Celsius. One of the amazing properties of water is that it has its greatest density at 4 degrees Celsius. And you can see some of that from this demonstration. You can see that the really cold water at 0 degrees actually moves down to the bottom. This is extremely important in the creation because the cold water will actually go down and bring fresh oxygenated water to the bottom of a pond or a lake. The surface waters cool down, become more dense, and then go down to the bottom. A diagram may be helpful to show how water moves as the temperature changes in a large body of water. So, let's consider a body of water in here. As the temperature cools in the fall, it will eventually reach a temperature of 4 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, water has its greatest density and therefore will tend to sink or go down. And as it goes down, it displaces some of the bottom waters. And the bottom waters will then move up and also cool down then. In doing so, fresh oxygenated water from the surface is also brought down to the bottom of the lake, providing then dissolved oxygen for fish and other aquatic life. Eventually, the temperature outside gets colder and the water will cool down to 0 degrees and start to freeze. And so we get a layer of ice forming on top of the water. The ice now will also act as an insulator and prevent the water below it from getting really cold. So even though the temperature above the ice may be minus 20 degrees Celsius, the ice forms an insulating barrier over the water, preventing the water further down from actually freezing. And so the temperature below the water will be 0 degrees Celsius, and eventually 1 degree, 2 degrees, and at the bottom it will be 4 degrees. It can get no colder than 4 degrees because that's when the water is the most dense. And so the water from here cannot go down. The only way you can get it to freeze would be if the whole lake were to freeze, which is, of course, highly unlikely because we also have heat coming in from the ground itself. So over the winter then, we have the temperature of the water between 0 degrees and up roughly 4 degrees Celsius. As it begins to warm up in the springtime, the ice will begin to melt. So our ice disappears. And eventually the water will again warm up to 4 degrees Celsius. As it warms up, it again becomes more dense, goes down to the bottom, and displaces the water at the bottom. This again brings fresh, oxygenated water down to the bottom, so there's plenty of dissolved oxygen for the aquatic life, and also for decomposing organic matter at the bottom. The water at the bottom, which tends to be richer in nutrients, is then forced up to the top, bringing more nutrients into the surface waters for the algae to grow and produce then food for the aquatic life. As it continues to warm up, the water then becomes less dense and will remain near the surface. And so the surface waters by the summertime may reach a temperature of 20 or 25 degrees Celsius, and the surface waters will tend to be fairly well mixed by winds, and so the bottom here may be 18 degrees, and then it drops fairly rapidly to 4 degrees at the bottom. Marvelous way in which the water is created so as to be able to transport dissolved oxygen to the bottom of a body of water, bring nutrients back up, and that cycle occurs twice a year.